Kresmer. I'm an associate publisher from 7 Days and one of the Tech Jam organizers. 7 Days is one of the co-founders and organizers of the Tech Jam with the Vermont Technology Alliance, which is an industry trade organization representing a lot of the businesses that you see here today. Thanks for joining us for this panel, Sparking Burlington's Future. Very exciting session today. We're really excited to hear from them. And before we get started, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Tech Jam sponsors, Dealer.com, My Web Grocer, C2, Biotech Instruments, Champlain College, Fairpoint Communications, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, Logic Supply, Merchants Bank, the Vermont Technology Council, the state of Vermont, and the city of Burlington. We really could not produce this event without them. So thank you, and here we go. Miro, you ready?
I'm ready, Kathy. Okay. And I think the panel we have here is ready too. This is an exciting discussion. I'm glad we were able to do it this way, a little easier to have a talk about where BTV Ignite is going, what the potential is down here than in the big hall upstairs. Very appreciative and excited to be joined by a panel that includes, to my right, Ray Daniels, who is the former Kansas City, Kansas Superintendent of Schools and co-author of the Kansas City Playbook, which is their playbook, similar to what we plan to write here over the next 6 months, that mapped out how to best leverage the Google Fiber for community benefit that they have there in Kansas City, Kansas. On the video link, I assume we have Sheldon Grizzle here with us. Is that true?
That's Sheldon.
Great. It's true. I can't actually see you, Sheldon, but I hear you. So welcome. We're excited. Thank you for making time in your day for this. Sheldon is the founder of the company Lab Business Accelerator in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Chattanooga and Kansas City really are the two cities we see as sort of comparable to Burlington in terms of the fiber optic resources that they have, and who are a little bit ahead of us in terms of really thinking self-consciously about the opportunity that creates. And so we're very excited again to have Ray and Sheldon here to share what they've done already in those cities. But we're going to talk about what BTV Ignite means for Burlington and what's happening here a little bit more too, in addition to what I was able to get out upstairs. We are the BTV Ignite Advisory Group is working really across 6 areas to move the city forward. Could we just quickly, a number of the BTV Ignite Advisory Group members are here with us. Could you just stand and be acknowledged, be recognized, so that everyone knows who you are and can connect with you afterwards if they would like to? John, Rubi, and Erika up here on the panel are also part of that group. Here's the 6 areas we're working on. We're working on a gig initiative that is working to provide high-speed gigabit connectivity to the schools, as I talked about upstairs, and additional community facilities throughout Burlington. We're working on ongoing improvement of the technology infrastructure. It's one thing to have these enormous fiber optic resources we have. It's another thing to leverage those and make them a real competitive advantage. Creating local, there are 2 efforts ongoing right now to create local clouds that would really allow us to wirelessly access and to use the local, basically leverage the local fiber optic resources instead of losing some of the potential of that and some of the speed of that by having our cloud computing here going on in remote storage facilities, servers, having a local cloud is something that could really push, amplify, accelerate the efforts, and we'll hear a little bit about that. Bill has been helping us linked with some resources. A 3rd strategy is the calendar of local events I talked about upstairs. A 4th strategy is creating spaces that generate innovation, including maker spaces, research and development spaces, co-working spaces. 5, identifying, supporting, and nurturing Burlington's core capabilities. I think John will speak to that a little bit when we get to John. Cybersecurity is really one of those already identified core capabilities that Burlington has and distinguishes Burlington's efforts from most other parts of the country. And then finally, we are in the early stages of developing some kind of strategy for recruiting and mentoring early stage startup companies. All right, so with that, I would like to turn the mic over to Bill Wallace, who again has been a great partner already in these early days of BTV Ignite and has seen something here in this community that caught his interest, and then we responded to that. Bill being here has really galvanized this local conversation and made us aware of what is going on elsewhere. So I thought, Bill, we'd start this panel by Bill giving something of an overview of what US Ignite is, what it hopes to be.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. I should say also that one of the ingredients to success is strong leadership from a mayor like Mayor Weinberger, and he's embraced what we are proposing wholeheartedly and for the benefit of the entire community. As I mentioned upstairs, we're a nonprofit with inspiration from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and National Science Foundation. We're focused on taking advantage of this next generation internet that Burlington has at its fingertips because we think it's a competitive necessity for the future. Other countries are doing it. We have some catching up to do, but we can do that. Our goal is to create 60 transformative apps that affect the delivery of healthcare and education and public safety and transportation and clean energy. And we're doing that through 200 communities over time. We're at about 25 now. Burlington is number 26. We are a convener of people like those at this table, and we're focused on. Some people have asked, what does Burlington get by being part of US Ignite? Well, first and foremost, applications. We have a long funnel of applications being developed. Over 200 started, and we're down to 30 core ones that will be available to the community and applications developers in Burlington. Secondly, best practices. Ray is a great example of this. Kansas City has been through a deployment of a fiber network and development of applications and hacker spaces and digital sandboxes, and we've been tapping him aggressively for the last 2 days at Burlington High School and elsewhere to benefit from his best practices, and we're doing the same thing with Sheldon in Chattanooga. Third, we bring access to corporate resources. Some of our corporate sponsors have made in-kind contributions and are looking for places to deploy those in-kind contributions. Adam Provost and I have a good conversation planned with a well-known web services provider who's offered some specific assistance to the community of Burlington. And then finally, we are tapped in pretty well to other federal agencies, Economic Development Administration, National Science Foundation, the White House, who believe this is a competitive necessity and will have, I think, some programs that could be specifically tailored to Burlington's needs. And as I said upstairs, you're uniquely positioned to take advantage of a pivotal time in the development of this next generation, not only because of the symmetrical gigabit network you have, but also because of the density of research and education and the students that you have here, the entrepreneurial spirit, which is contagious, and we're seeing it already, and then these evolving core capabilities that the mayor mentioned, not only from Champlain, but also UVM and elsewhere. UVM has been a great partner along with Champlain in thinking through how to leverage the capabilities we have. And one of the capabilities at UVM is Internet 2, which is a great add-on to the local connection that you have here and connects 45 to 50 additional universities at high speed for research purposes. So, thank you.
Great, Bill. Thank you. So, we will, of course, leave time in this panel for questions from the audience. Before we do that, though, I have a few questions we generated in advance for each of the members of the panel, and I wanted to start with Ray and Sheldon. Maybe Ray, you can go first since you're right here. What steps have you taken in Kansas City to leverage the fiber infrastructure and drive economic development as well, or community development?
First of all, I bring you greetings from Silicon Prairie. Not Silicon Valley, but Silicon Prairie. I don't know who coined that phrase. I wish it had been me. But I think it's important, first of all, let me say I've really enjoyed my time in Burlington. You have a wonderful city. I'm impressed by what you have going on. I think you're positioned to do some really, really great things. And we look forward to continuing the conversation between Kansas City, Missouri, Burlington, and other cities around the country, Chattanooga. We think that's those conversations will be really important. Let me put this in some context. I want you to know what the Google project in Kansas City is. One of the issues, it's bigger. I like your size, about 40,000 population. I think it's going to be, you have a lot more compact area. In Kansas City, they're a large metropolitan area. We have about 750,000 people that Google's trying to get hooked up. But when Google came in, they made it very clear that this is a fiber to the home initiative. They're hooking up homes all across the Kansas City, Missouri area. There are no businesses hooked up. Google made that very clear from the beginning. They did not have a business plan. We keep asking them when they're going to have a business plan. And their standard answer is soon. We've got that chorus going now. We ask Google how soon, and they just say soon, soon. So it's different in the fact that we haven't, at this point, had a lot of engagement from businesses. But at the same time, let me say there's a lot of conversation around business and economic development going on in Kansas City. The process we have used, the two mayors, and we were fortunate to have two really outstanding mayors, they worked together across the state lines between the two cities to develop a plan that would move the Kansas City area forward in enhancing their citizens' lives. They developed what was called the Mayor's Bi-State Innovation Team. MBIT, is, you hear that term batted around, that's what it is. Each mayor appointed 6 people from the two communities to be on that team. I was the co-chair from Kansas City, Kansas, and Mike Burke, an attorney from Kansas City, Missouri, was the co-chair from Missouri. We met for over a year, about a year. We established a number of things as we went along. We had a hard time, frankly, at the beginning deciding kind of what our goal was and how we were wrapping ourselves around Google and the Google initiative. The charge to us was to use how we could use Google Fiber to improve public services, create community, assist in advanced education, spark economic development, create jobs, or otherwise improve the standard of life in the KC Metro. Well, that's pretty broad and embracing. So we had to, first of all, just kind of figure out what we were supposed to do. We had dozens of meetings across the Kansas City area. I can't even begin to tell you how many meetings that we attended in the 9 to 10 months we worked on this. We decided real quickly it's just extremely important to hear from the community. And all segments of the community had to be a part of that conversation. And we used some facilitating groups in the Kansas City area to help us do that. But we wanted everybody to feel like they had a piece in the pie. It didn't make a difference what area you came from, whether you were rich, poor, education, healthcare, whatever it was. Everybody had an opportunity to get their input into that. Most of those organizations, or those, we call them ecosystems, had somebody on our bi-state innovation team representing them. But we didn't have a large group. We didn't put together a 40, 50 person MBIT group. But behind the 12 people, there was lots of other work going on in education, in healthcare, in economic development, that then came back to our 12 and we put the plan together. Couple of things. We figured out real quickly that this was not about technology. It's about sociology. The technology thing's going to be there. You have it now. You've got the gig already. So we decided that, here's whether it's going to be AT&T or Time Warner or Google, whoever it's going to be, the technology was going to be there. So we focused on the sociology. Now you have the technology. How are you going to use that socially to make a difference in your communities? And we had some guiding principles, building community. How do you bring the community together and again, have all access to community a part of the plan? Digital inclusion, I want to talk about that a little more because I think it's critical. Ending that digital divide that we see in all communities. Global leadership, we've had telecommunication conferences with Barcelona, Amsterdam, Singapore, Moscow, Toronto, San Francisco. Again, just sharing what we're doing and sharing what they're doing, but we want to be a part of that global stage as well as the national stage. Achieving excellence, we don't want to look back 5 years from now and say, we just did this halfway. We got an average plan out there and an average implementation. We want to be sure we were achieving excellence. Creating a culture of innovation. There are a lot of things going on in Kansas City right now. Even though businesses are not linked, there's a ton of things happening in Kansas City right now around that area of innovation. Things just keep popping up all the time. And finally, network collaboration. And to me, that might be the most important part in what we're doing as a community. When we first got started in this, when the Google announcement was made and the MBIT team got to working, there were conversations taking place all over the city. I mean, everywhere we'd go, we'd hear about this group talking, and this group talking, and this group talking, and this group was doing this. But the problem was there was not any talking between them. There was nothing collaborative, nothing talking about how do we all work together as a strategic group to move the community forward. So when MBIT finished, we had our plan developed, written, we passed it off to the two mayors. That was the easy part. I mean, you that do strategic planning, the planning is the easy part, even though it's hard, it took us a year. That's the easy part. the implementation of it and how you move that forward to where it actually has a true impact on your community, that's the hard part. So the mayors were very concerned about, okay, we have this real nice plan now, how do we move it forward? Well, part of the recommendation from the MBIT was that another group be formed to be responsible for moving this forward through the community. And that group in Kansas City is called KC Digital Drive. If you go on the website or go on the internet and KC Digital Drive, you'll see that website and see some of the things that we're trying to do to have that collaboration and communication across the community. We think we're making some good headroads on that. We still have a long ways to go around the collaboration and communication piece because we are such a large area. We have some groups playing nicer than other groups. But overall, we think we're making some really strong progress in those areas. Just a couple of things that are happening around the area. We just launched KC, which is an economic development plan. It's driven by the two cities and Chamber of Commerce and businesses, corporations. That group is charged with, again, the economic development piece. When Google gets this business thing in place, how that's going to move forward. Just had a $2 million grant, matching grant, from $1 million from maybe Department of Commerce, the Federal Department of Commerce, I believe. We had a number of large corporations in Kansas City put the other $1 million in, opened up what we call a digital sandbox. And if you, again, you look on the internet, you Google Kansas City Digital Sandbox, you can hear about that. And that's a space in our Union Station where groups could apply to come in and be a part of that sandbox and put their organization in there to try things out, to collaborate. A lot of support from universities around that. We had almost 500 applications for that position, for those 8 positions. What was interesting about it was the guys who made the final decision said there were probably 200 of those that should have been funded. That there were so many good ideas that the top 8 are really staggering, but there were probably 200 more that could have been funded. So there's just some of the things we're doing around economic development. Last 2 things I want to talk about. One's the digital divide, and the second one, after my heart, education. I have to talk about education a little bit. The digital divide in our community is critical. Our school district's 80% free and reduced lunch. Kansas City, Missouri school district's very similar to that. We can't afford to leave our kids behind. There are so many important technical jobs that are going to be developed in Kansas City over the next few years. Already, I could name a dozen companies that are just on the cusp of having those jobs start up. The thing we hear from them is, we want to hire your people and we're not getting them right now. Kansas City needs to step up in our education system, K through 16 and beyond, to be sure that our citizens, young people, are ready to take those jobs when they become available. We can't afford to leave the people in digital divide behind. And that includes their parents, that includes everybody in the community. But young people are going to be critical. The last thing about education, education needs to be a community event, not a school district event. Education is going to be a major driver in how you move your workforce development forward. Meeting with your school district people yesterday, I was impressed by the things that they're beginning to do in their schools around helping young people learn how to use the technology. What we're finding is it's the veteran teachers and superintendents and principals are not ready for that move. Not all of them. There's still a lot that are, some that are making that move. There's going to be a significant need in professional development resources to help these schools move forward. So that's kind of where we are, and I think there's going to be some other questions. We'll talk about some other things later, but we're very optimistic in Kansas City. Again, there's tons of conversation going on right now. People from all over the world. It's been interesting being Google's test tube. It's been good and bad. We can talk later about what it's like to work with Google, but it's an experience like it is.
Thank you, Ray. Sheldon, could you tell us what's been going on in Chattanooga and what it really kind of condense for us what the efforts have been to take advantage of the fiber optic resources you have there?
Yeah, so just really quickly, can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. So EPB, the company that rolled out the fiber infrastructure here in town, is actually our electric utility as well. So the initial justification for it was around the smart grid. And so that was the first killer application that kind of came around Chattanooga. So now we have the most fully automated energy grid in the world. They've been able to reduce power outages by 60% over the first 2 years of the installation. So that's a really big deal, and we're that is making economic impact in our area. Some other specific things that we did once we launched it, just as a community, was EPB and a local foundation teamed up to basically invite business leaders, entrepreneurs, technologists, nonprofit leaders, government leaders into their offices to talk about what a gigabit fiber network is, and really solicit ideas like what kind of things can we do with it. That was almost 3 years ago, and those same people are now becoming leaders in our community around, how do we leverage this in those different spheres of influence. I think that was a really key early thing that we did. It was unstructured, but it was just feedback sessions. It was just a kind of a lunch and learn type opportunity. In 2011, we launched the Gig City campaign, which really that wasn't an organization, rather more of a marketing effort, an awareness campaign, where we were just trying to get the word out that Chattanooga, there's more in Chattanooga than just the choo-choo, or there's more to Chattanooga than just beautiful mountains and a river. And I've been to Burlington. It's a very similar feel when you're walking around the city, and so adding that technological component into our city's messaging was really important. At the same time, we launched the Gig Tank, and you mentioned when you first started the session, the very last thing that you talked about that Burlington's going to be focusing on is kind of the mentoring and advising of entrepreneurs. That's what I wake up every day doing. That's what the Company Lab is and does. And so that's the lens that I view all of this through. So the Gig Tank was something that we ran in partnership with another venture capital company here in town. And we put up, we had almost $300,000 on the table for the first year in competition and investment dollars that helped create a reason to come to Chattanooga for talented entrepreneurs and innovators of all kinds. And that was a really interesting tipping point for the community, because it went beyond an awareness campaign, which the Gig City was, and we put money on the table, and we put assets on the table that people could access and actually potentially launch a company. And I'll come back to that in a second. In the future, we're looking at connecting with cities like Burlington, Kansas City, Austin, Provo, all of these cities that have these networks, because none of us can exist as islands. We have to work with each other. Applications that are developed here need to scale to the other communities and vice versa. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. Last thing on Gig Tank in the future. So in 2014, we're going to be focusing on two verticals. Those verticals are advanced manufacturing and the smart grid. We've learned a lot about trying to do things that Chattanooga is not so great at doing. And those two things we have a lot of capabilities, talent, resources in. And so we're really going to be laser focused on those two verticals for Gig Tank in 2014.
Thank you, Sheldon. That was a great, concise summary. And I take your point about not working as islands. That the opportunity, really, that US Ignite, I think, creates for all of us is the chance to learn, really be aware of, and learn from colleagues, peers in other cities that are undertaking this kind of effort. I was on the phone with your mayor, Sheldon, Andy Burke, earlier in the week in getting ready for our US Ignite announcement. I know our librarian, Rubi Simon, who we'll hear from in a moment. We'll hear a little bit about her trip to Kansas City and the potential collaboration with their library. Again, just this very panel as an opportunity to kind of share and learn from other communities is great. So one quick follow-up question for each of you before we get to what's going on in Burlington. Ray, can you just describe a little bit more what this KC Digital Drive is? What kind of, is it a volunteer organization? Does it have staff? What's its relationship to the local governments? What kind of budget does it have? And how's that funded?
Very cheaply, I can tell you that right now. Right now it's a staff of two people, and the one young man was part of our support group on the Mayor's Bi-State Innovation Team. His job is a facilitator. We said right away that KC Digital Drive is not to tell people what to do, not to tell companies what to do or organizations what to do, but to facilitate the networking and keep track of all the things that's happening in communication. So that's what Aaron is responsible for, bringing what we call the ecosystems together. So there's communications going, you can call them silos if you want to, a lot of communication across those silos and within silos. He's responsible then for letting the community know what's going on around the community around the Google hookup. And he's responsible for keeping Google happy, which is harder than you might think it is. But that's what KC Digital Drive is. And right now, I will just be honest with you, one of the issues we're dealing with in Kansas City right now is the resources. We haven't tapped into the mother lode yet, except for the one instance where the $2 million project. But we're hoping as we move forward with some more concrete plans that we'll begin to get some of that funding come in from the corporations and philanthropic groups and the government too. Great.
Thanks, Ray. And Sheldon, actually, couple follow-up questions for you. One, money question as well. Are you saying that there's actually public money going into this, that's being used essentially as venture capital? And then secondly, curious if you could say more about how having both the energy utility and gig provider under one company is working. Is that a sensible, has that been a positive thing to have both those services provided by one company? We don't have that here in Burlington. We weren't allowed to set it up that way. It would be interesting to hear what your experience is there.
Can you repeat the first question?
Well, just I'm trying to understand the gig tank that you mentioned. Is that it sounds like you had $300,000 you mentioned of
okay.
money.
Yeah.
Was that, where did that money come from?
Okay, so the Company Lab is a nonprofit. We're supported by foundations. We're also supported through the state of Tennessee through a statewide entrepreneurship program. All of the money that was dedicated for Gig Tank specifically, that $300,000 came from the private sector. So $120,000 came from two different venture capital companies to get invested into the 8 different entrepreneur teams. We had Alcatel-Lucent, who was the major prize money. They gave $100,000. Warner Brothers gave us $25,000 prize for the winning digital media team. And another venture company called Lamppost Group gave $50,000 for the top student team that came through as well. So it was a great show of support from the private sector, leveraging an investment that the public sector had made. On the other side of how the EPB utility and I guess fiber optics side is working, I think it makes sense to be thinking of internet as a utility now. I know that's not a super popular opinion, but I think that's one of the only ways that we begin to get over these digital divides. In thinking of it just more as water. If you turn the tap on, it needs to come out. I think the local government was the only one that could make this investment in Chattanooga, and so I'm glad that we've made that investment. It's already reaping benefits for the city, economically, culturally, socially. civically in all different aspects of life. And so I don't ever question that investment. I think it was a great, very innovative thing. And whenever you're doing innovative things, there are going to be people questioning, was it good or not? And I'd rather be pushing the envelope on that side than behind everybody else.
I want to work our way now down the panel. We're also joined this morning by John Rajewski, who's the Champlain professor and head of the Leahy Center for Digital Investigation. As we mentioned at the top, one of the identified core capabilities that the city of Burlington has is in cybersecurity. A large part of that is because of what Champlain College is doing. And John, I was hoping you could kind of explain what that means a little bit, talk about how Champlain is sort of building on top of Burlington's infrastructure to enhance this capacity.
So again, I'm John. I teach at Champlain, so I'm wearing many hats. I teach in the academic side of the house, but I'm also the director of the Leahy Center, as Mr. Mayor has said. So I think what's great about Champlain is they're giving every single dorm room gigabit connectivity. Our centers of excellence, which is, we have two, the Emerging Media Center and the Leahy Center for Digital Investigation, will also have gigabit capability installed very soon. I know our dorms are online right now. What this is going to allow us to do is develop those next generation apps that everyone's been talking about. So how does cybersecurity play into this? Well, Champlain College, the small school up the hill, has one of arguably the top program in digital forensics in the world. We've been recognized by several external groups. One I cannot share with today because we're waiting for clearance. But we do a lot of great things, and we produce amazing students to really hit the ground running. And with the companies that you're hearing about releasing the reports that China's hacking everyone. I mean, just that type of caliber student where they're landing jobs making $80,000 right out of school. So how does the Leahy Center play into this? The Leahy Center has been providing digital forensic services, research for many groups within Vermont, including government and private areas, other schools as well. What the gig allows us to do, and what gig does is make everything really fast. What it doesn't do is make things really secure. And companies, universities, government, it could be an insider threat, it could be an internal employee doing something evil, or it could be an outside actor coming in to do something to either destroy or steal information from outside of the network. Whenever that happens, companies need to respond in some way, and usually that way is with an internal employee. And as we all know, IT staff are typically stretched pretty thin, and maybe they don't have the skills or resource to actually deal with that appropriately, also in a legal way. When it comes to digital forensics, you must process a computer the same way you would a smoking gun at a crime scene. And if you don't, that evidence will not get into court. So what the gig allows us to do is offer a service similar to cybersecurity as a service. So if an organization, an entity within Vermont has an issue, a concern, they need to do an investigation, maybe there's litigation going on, they have to handle the digital evidence appropriately, we can do so as if we're literally in that building, but we can do it from across the city. We can move incredible amounts of data across Burlington's gigabit infrastructure in seconds. With other networks across the country, it would take hours, if not days, to move that type of data that we can move in seconds. Using the same latest, greatest tools that the largest consulting companies are doing, we can do all of that right here in Burlington. And then once we connect out to other colleges, universities via internet too, and also across the gigabit backbone, Burlington can really be the hub for providing this type of service. I've been consulting with several very large organizations, and they've basically communicated to me that they'd love to partner and they've been trying to figure this out, but they've never had this type of test bed to do it. So we are really excited at Champlain College to be able to offer this. And we have a table, we have a booth. Go talk to my students. They can engage you on this as well.
Great, John. Exciting. Next, we have Rubi Simon, who is happy to say, one of the best things I feel like I've been able to do in my 18 months as mayor is bring in Rubi as our new library director. Rubi comes to us having served in a number of roles as a star of the Boston library system and then as the director of the Colchester library system immediately before coming here. Already in just a few months on the job, she's done, this is the latest thing I heard. Rubi, when she came here, if you wanted a book that the library didn't already have and needed to be acquired or borrowed from another library. It took almost 8 weeks for that library that resource to get here. Ruby now can get it to you in a week, and she's also changed the way our hours work at the library to better serve the public, and is doing a number of other innovative things. And we're hoping that gig access is going to let her do even more innovation. And can you share with us, Ruby, what you think the gig means for the library and what your plans are?
Sure. So obviously I have to start out with I have the best boss ever, right? So so I'd like to start usually just with the purpose of a public library. I think a lot of us really forget the fundamental reason why public libraries came to be. We always assume it's the book, and I always get the question of, what is technology going to do to libraries? And we're like, it's the best thing ever. So for us, the public library, it was never about the books. It's always been about information. And how do we disseminate that and ensure that there's equal access to everyone? And that was the basis of public libraries, and I believe that it still is today. So this, to us, is a new chapter on how we disseminate that information. It's going to give us the ability to create some incredibly sophisticated collections, access to trainings, and we talk about the digital divide all the time. Libraries have taken this on for the last several years because we've seen it. We have people that come to us that do not have access to the technology that we see today, and a lot of us take it for granted because we have it at home. But there's a large population, a large gap that doesn't, and the library has taken on that role in terms of how do we train the people that don't have the resources to be able to maneuver this. And also, we are in a global economy, so we have to think about our kids and the future of them, as well as our current adult learners who haven't had that training that we're already instilling in our kids, that we're trying to move forward in that aspect. So with this capability, it's just, it can just go, we have no idea how far it can go, but just the conversations we're having right now with the ability of the collections that we can create can go so far. I recently went to Kansas City a couple of weeks ago, and it was a very inspirational visit. I met with the directors there, and they're creating the first of its kind. It's a software lending program application that would give people the ability, just like our ebooks or our print books, give our common person anywhere in our community to come in and borrow a software program. We're in the process of having conversations to create a consortium that we can then share all these programs, whether they're open source or private. The exciting piece of that is, as we create all these hackathons, we have one coming up next weekend at the library, it gives people the ability to create new programs that we can then add to this collection and make it accessible to anyone, anywhere. And that's the beauty of this, where we are today with this capability. So those are kind of the things that we're looking at, and what does that mean for us? What does it mean for our community? What does it mean for our public library, for our schools? And how do we share all these resources and create these partnerships just to elevate our quality of life? So we are very, very excited about what this can bring to us here.
Great, thank you, Ruby. And finally, we have Erika Lowe, who is both a BHS English teacher and is a fellow this year at the Partnership for Change, which is this exciting grant-funded initiative, which is now in its second year under the leadership of Executive Director Hal Colston, who I'm happy to see is here with us this morning as well, that is working with the Burlington School District, and I see Paul Irish from the school district. Thank you for being here, Paul. That to transform, to remodel the high school experience here in Burlington. This is, I think, another very exciting initiative that certainly my administration would love to see succeed. We actually relocated the mayor's office to the high school for a week last March to help bring attention to the Partnership for Change effort and what it's trying to do. I'm doing shout outs. I'll mention we have Jessica Nordhaus, who's been my advisor on education issues and really was the creator and implementer of that week, and who's here as well. And one of the things we did during that week was go to a class taught by Erika where they were really pushing the boundaries. You wouldn't recognize it. I don't think looking around the room, most of us in the room wouldn't recognize what Erika was trying to do with her colleagues as a high school class. It was a very different place in every way than the high school I went to, at least. And we have Erika here to tell us more about how technology is expanding the horizons of her students and what you see of this Gigabit initiative offering to PHS and the rest of the school district.
Well, Ray Daniels said that this is not about technology, this is about sociology. And I couldn't agree more. Almost half of our students in the Burlington School District are on free or reduced lunch. And so prior to securing the Nellie Mae Foundation grant and the one-to-one technology initiative in our school district, we had teachers and students that were scrambling for very basic access to technology. And we also had students and families with no computers or technology internet in the home. So one of the things that we've found in the past few years is now that we have a one-to-one technology initiative in grades 6 through 10, next year it'll be grades 6 through 12, it's created more equity in our school district. All of a sudden, all of our students have, an even playing field. And what I'm finding in my classroom is that students who really struggle in school, some of our English language learners or students that are on 504 plans or special education plans, all of a sudden they're able to use the iPads in their classroom to better serve their learning needs. They can expand text. They can click on a word and then get the definition. They can follow along while the text reads aloud to them. I'm also finding that it's really challenging my students. All of a sudden, I have a much more student-centered environment where I'm less of a teacher with all the knowledge, imparting it upon these empty vessels. It's more of a two-way street, and they're teaching me, I'm teaching them. I'm more of a coach and a facilitator, where all of a sudden all of my students can challenge themselves and have a more personalized experience. We have students at the high school who are teaching themselves how to code in their own time. Some of them are writing software. And I think one of the things that BTV Ignite allows us to do is to offer opportunities for those kinds of students and also better prepare our students for a 21st century economy. I've been following what's happening in Chattanooga with the schools, and some schools there are being able to do things like manipulate robots under the Pacific Ocean from Chattanooga to pull data and in real life time work with researchers over there. One of the 60 applications that US Ignite is working on will allow students to manipulate the Mars rover from the classroom. So what we're really talking about is blowing out the classroom walls and giving our students some amazing, incredible experiences. We're very fortunate that we have the Gigabit Fiber in all of our Burlington schools. And it's on at the high school right now. And so our next step is really working with the city to figure out what are the possibilities for our students now that we have this capability. And some steps that we've taken are thinking about maker spaces. The 2 middle schools just received grants through the Tarrant Foundation to create maker spaces. And this is a place where students can play and experiment, create with this kind of technology, and where teachers can learn alongside with them. We're now looking at how can we create this sort of experience at the high school. And we've, thank you, Miro, for allowing us to have a student on your advisory board. I think it's so important because we're finding that it's really students that are driving a lot of this change and saying this is what we need in our future. So it's exciting.
Great, Erika. So, excellent. So we have about 10 minutes left. There's another panel in here at noon. So I think at this point we'd like to throw open the floor to anyone here with us that has questions for either our Burlington speakers or the guests we have here with us this morning. Go ahead.
Is it useful or not useful to project 3 to 4 years in the future in terms of employment growth and business startup? Is that useful or not?
We think it's useful. Our group's not dealing with that. We've been talking to the city governments about that. what's going to be needed in the next 3 to 5 years in our community around not only high-tech jobs, but all jobs. So we're trying to figure out how to measure that, and city growth is trying to figure out how to measure that, but we think it's very important that we are trying to figure out how many jobs are going to be out there and what's the growth going to be. Because we think it's going to be exceptional in the next 3 to 5 years as Google moves into the business structure.
And I would just add one, maybe ask Sheldon this. There's an extremely tight linkage in Chattanooga between the Volkswagen manufacturing facility and the local community college and high schools. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sheldon, but I think Volkswagen is doing a great job of defining what they need 3 to 4 years out. And that in turn is leading Volkswagen to invest millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in the facility.
One more.
I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, Bill. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying that I think there's a very tight linkage in Chattanooga between the Volkswagen manufacturing facility and the Chattanooga State STEM school and Chattanooga State itself.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Did you want to say anything else, Ray?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is not only projected growth, but what are those businesses going to need in the next 3 to 5 years in the way of workers? I think that affects the entire community. It affects what happens in your education system, again, all areas. Things are going to change in our businesses, and so we're trying to develop that conversation between businesses and education, healthcare and education, so that 5 years from now, when those high-tech jobs or whatever jobs show up, the school districts, colleges, community colleges, and so on are developing students to come out of there. So it's going to impact on curriculum. It's going to impact on teaching methods and how kids learn. So I just think that conversation between education and businesses, how many are you going to need and what are they going to have to look like?
Great. Any other questions? Pat?
Sheldon talked about that STEM school, but what is that initiative? Are they doing a specific junior college or K-12 initiative in STEM, or what's going on?
Yeah, Sheldon, I'll re-ask the question. Are you familiar with what the STEM school is doing, the one that's embedded within Chattanooga State?
A little bit. What's the specific question about it?
Are they?
Just what?
How are they linked, and what?
Standalone initiative?
Is it standalone or is it linked to the other STEM schools? Yeah, who funds it? That kind of
So there's a local foundation in Chattanooga called the Public Education Foundation, kind of a reform school foundation, and they set up what's called the STEM Hub. And so the STEM Hub is an oversight body for the entire region for Hamilton County schools, and they also funded a STEM school, which is where all of the beta testing, the new curriculum, the project-based learning, adaptive learning, all of these new kind of learning tools are being used. And then the STEM Hub is taking what they learn out of that one school that's happening at Chattanooga State, which is our community college, and then they're going to spread those learnings across all the other schools in the region. So that's kind of the initial vision of the STEM school and then the STEM Hub, extract learnings and then scale it out to the entire school system.
I think we got time for one more question, if there's one more out there. I'll call my dad to end the panel here.
Libraries that I'm familiar with typically are only service a particular community, college community or taxpayer community. But the digital information is so readily available and remains so readily available, yet a limited group is paying for the service, taxpayers say Burlington. How do you bring those two things together to make digital information readily available, yet at the same time not do it at somebody else's tremendous expense?
First, you have to start by getting your library card. So that is the key. It's not a campaign here. But what the programs that have been designed, and it's no different than how we circulate ebooks, is that library card, your number on there gives you access to our collection. So when you come into our library, you have to fit in the requirements of whether you're a Burlington resident, we have various categories if you're a student, and then if you're a non-resident, we have a fee, so you pay a certain amount to be able to have access to our collections. So that would give you access. And that fee is usually based on what, we give per capita for a taxpayer for library usage. But that is the key, and most libraries, that's how we give access. Vermont and other states have, there's some state funding in certain states that helps, streamline that across the board. Here in Vermont, I believe we have a consortium, particularly with Chittenden County libraries in different areas, that helps offset some of the cost in terms of being partners in, whether it's an ebook, purchase that we have. But that way we can make sure we can afford and ensure that we can have access across the board to as many constituents in the state as possible.
All right, thank you, Ruby. We're out of time. I see Kathy Resmer at the back from 7 Days. Want to thank 7 Days for organizing this and giving us the opportunity to have this important conversation. If you want to keep talking, there's a few more people in the room to point out. Nate Wildfire, our Assistant Director for Economic Development, is here, as well as our Director of Community and Economic Development, Peter Owens. Also, we have City Councilor Jane Nodell, who's been a long-standing proponent of the power, the possibilities that our fiber optic resources represent, and Stephen Barraclaw, who probably more than anyone else is a consultant running BT and did more than anything else to get us to this BTV Ignite launch this week. So if you have more questions about where we're headed, they're available to you. Thank you to our panel. This was a great way to get this event going. Thank you.